you having me.
Thanks for coming, everybody, and thanks for staying.
Yeah. Listen, where's Ellen here? Is that? Okay. And Mo Henry's here.
And again, before we start, we should mention some of the other people who worked on the movie who are here. Is Scott Moran, our mixer, here? Anyway, he and Daniel Sackwood, our sound supervisor, both did an incredible job with really bad sound elements. Most of the dialogue tracks were lost. The original production sound, the original non-rotation of the set were lost. So they had the worst possible elements to work with to try to make it sound good. For the longest time when we were editing the movie, it just sounded horrendous, and those guys did like miracle work because so many of the sources for the sound were like multi-generation. And also, Joe Samuel, who's basically my first assistant in the editing room, organized everything and followed around the footage for about 6 months before I came on. Paul Hart, who worked on the film side of it. We actually had a full film editing room set up, and Paul basically found a ton of things that were missing, and I actually enlisted him to edit the bathroom scene, which is one of the better scenes in the movie. So, and I also wanted to mention Randy Holden, who one of the all-time great rock and roll guitarist, and wrote the song "Fruit and Icebergs" by Blue Cheer, which appears in the nightclub scene. So, Randy's here as well. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else is here, but anyway, I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I guess here's the thing. Having over the years, this has taken so long, and Gary Graver showed me, about 3 hours of footage a couple of times back in the late '90s. I mean, it's a long odyssey here, but I must compliment you. This, one could feel the movie there, but one wondered how one was going to get to it in Welles' absence. He had fine cut some of it, but there was a lot of material that was not fine cut. You could feel the story there, but tell us. I want to get to you guys as well about this, but I want to just. What was your method of getting to the narrative that's in there, to find this in the clay?
I first saw footage actually from Gary as well. He lived 3 houses down from me in Studio City, and we became really close friends. And he had Other Side of the Wind in his garage. First time I went into his garage, I saw this shelf of work print, and it said Orson Welles production, Other Side of the Wind. And he had showed me a couple of the scenes that people see Jake's arrival at the party and the car in the rain scene, and I was just like kind of blown away and like kind of baffled at the same time. And just the amount of editing that Orson was trying to do was just really like far out and really unbelievable. And Gary and I talked, and I kept saying, "Hey Gary, let's get together on weekends and try to get this movie finished." And I guess I was naive enough to think that we could have actually done it in his garage on weekends, not knowing what I know now and everything that everybody went through. But so then years later, when Gary passed away, and I thought that would be my last opportunity to work on the movie. But then last year I was lucky enough to get on it, and just remembering the footage and then seeing all the things that Orson had cut, it was very, very, very intimidating. Yeah. And he had basically edited about 30% of the movie. So about 40 minutes of what you see in this movie was pretty much fine cut by Orson.
Right.
And that sort of set the style for the editing that we knew he was trying to achieve, which was sort of a more edit-based type of filmmaking. He always said that when he was doing Citizen Kane and Touch of Evil and some of his other movies, he was more of a camera-based director, meaning that he did a lot of long crane and dolly shots, and did move them through blocking and did it in camera. But later on in his career, when he was working in a much lower budget realm and couldn't afford studio equipment and studio level operators, he got into a style where he was trying to create that same feeling of movement just through editing. Everything was fragmented, but he was just trying to create the same feeling of movement from one shot to the other, trying to create like a seamless tapestry of like motion.
Right.
So that was basically following his roadmap for those 40 minutes of scenes. We were able to kind of go through the footage that he hadn't touched and hopefully kind of achieve something that seems like it's part of the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I want to talk first. Mo, I want to ask you about the negative cutting, because you've got the elements that have been sitting here for years, and it's like you're having to work with all this. What were the particular challenges of working with those original elements once Bob?
Well, first of all, it wasn't actually negative cutting because it was already completely cut in some way or form in France. So it was in little tiny pieces. And so my normal job is to conform negative to, let's for instance say, when we worked together, to your cut. It was the opposite. We were sort of on a scavenger hunt, trying to find scenes that were important to Philip. That was prior to when you came on, Bob. Dove and I basically created a list of things, like wish list of if we could find a midget or a mannequin or the fireworks scene. So we were on a scavenger hunt, going through these hundreds and hundreds of cans, just trying to find what they wanted.
So there were over 1,100 cans that came in from Paris. All the negative had been in Paris for the last almost over 40 years. Kind of trapped in a situation with a lot of political and financial stuff that needed to be cleared up. So when all that negative came back, Mo was the first person to deal with it. So she and everything had been broken down into these tiny little rolls for whatever reason. Because the start of it was because when Orson was cutting on film, he was editing himself on film, but because it was a mixture of 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter, the only way he could edit the two together was to take all the 16 millimeter footage, which was most of the footage at the party, and then blow that up optically to 35. So going from a small film format to a large film format. And so, but when they blew it up, they didn't want to pay to blow up all the footage. So he built these elaborate select rolls with all his favorite, 3 different versions of each line all strung together, and basically all his favorite pieces of each take. And they used that to actually cut the negative, so they didn't have to pay for the entire take. So consequently, everything, even though it was never really finished and edited, everything, the whole movie was like really chopped up in terms of the negative. And all the lights were missing, which made Mo's job a nightmare. And so she basically had to try to get everything organized, which was a 6-month process between her and my guys in the editing room, Dove Samuel and his crew, even before I could get started. So it was like a huge problem, But we had the perfect person because, Mo's incredibly experienced negative cutter and actually one of the few who are still around and still willing to do it. So we couldn't have done without her, literally.
Oh, thank you. Ellen, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit because you're the music editor, and what is interesting, it's little known, but it was in Robert Leaning's biography, and Beatrice Wells has talked about this too, that Orson was very up on the latest music always. Like, in the 80s, I mean, I think he was partial to Whitesnake. He was like, any heavy metal, he knew it backwards and forwards. He knew all the bands. So I'm thinking that perhaps you have detailed notes, or what kind of music awareness were you dealing with in terms of what Wells had left behind, and what were you having to supply imaginatively to resonate with whatever the evidence was giving you?
Well, there wasn't a whole lot that he left behind for us, but he did have notes. And he did things that, like in the party, that he could have all these different styles of mariachi, gypsy, jazz. And Bob and I, early on in the process of this whole thing, we started playing around with different types of music and how, which room it was all coming out of. That was the big puzzle that we needed to kind of to figure out. Which band was playing where, how long was it going to go, and how many rooms it was going to go through. Was it going to be heard outside? So we got all of that kind of figured out, and then we started putting in all different types of music that he suggested in the script. And we found that some of it worked, but most of it was really jazz piano trio that worked so well going from room to room and there's a dialogue. There's so much dialogue.
Yeah, he had only put 2 cues into the picture that he was working on. The music would Jake Arrives at the Party, which was a whole quarter piano piece by Oscar Peterson, which a lot of people have seen. and then the gypsy lament at the end, the singing, old man singing at the end of the movie. But other than that, he was just cutting with dialogue. So he never really put in a lot of temp music, and all the film within the film stuff, he didn't really have anything. So there were a lot of long discussions of like, should we even have score? At one point, everybody was saying, well, maybe it should just be, source music, because it's supposed to be like a documentary almost. So maybe we should have a traditional score. But then once we put the first version of the movie together, we really felt that it was above all a dramatic, emotional movie, and that really was something that called out for a dramatic score.
Right. Michel Legrand really came through.
Yeah, Michel was great, and actually Orson had hired Michel Legrand in 1975, we found out.
Wow.
Because Michel had scored Orson's movie F for Fate, which he had made while he was making this movie.
Right.
And so when we decided to have a score, it was like, he was the obvious person to go to, and everybody's saying, well, Michel's almost 90, is he retired? And we found that was like the furthest thing from the truth, that he was like in the studio, touring with an orchestra, he was doing all this stuff, and flew right out, and came right from the airport, went to the editing room and said, let's start working on the movie. So, and wrote an incredible score. I mean, Michel's a guy who's, great.
Wound up living with Michel for a while in his home in France. So she really had a close experience.
Oh. Can you talk a little about that? Yeah.
Well, Michel, as we know, is 87 years old, so he came to the States to stop the film with us and then left. And we would send him the picture, but we had no idea what was happening over there, We kept thinking, how are you doing, Michel? I'm fine. And so a week before we were supposed to score, he called and said, I need Ellen to be with me in France, and she stays with me in my chateau, and we figure out how to get, because he wrote everything by hand on score, so that all of that needed to be translated into our digital world, because we were going to be scoring in the digital realm, and and we needed a metronome that would fit with everything that he was writing.
All done with live players, though. I mean, none of it was done digitally. It was a live orchestra.
It's a live, yeah, nothing.
She has combos.
But to be annotated, you need
that needed to
digital
be
interface.
translated into meters and tempos and into a click, so that the orchestra, we had a 60-piece orchestra, and that needed to be translated so that the conductor could conduct to the tempo that he was wanting to, and gave him a whole score into the digital realm. So I got to stay with Michel at his place for a week, going through the scores with him, and it was great because I arrived at his place and he gave me a stopwatch and what is called a click book. And a click book was made many, many years ago that you had a frame, and each frame could be eight segments to that. So that would be each click. So you have 15-1 click, and that would represent a tempo. So those are the two things he gave me. When I arrived, it was like, okay, it's like, I had all this computer stuff that we did. and Michel and I sat there for 4 days and just poured over his scores and poured over his timings and what he wanted and how he wanted to sync up his music to the score.
Bob, that's so great. Bob, I want to find out too more about the map that you were able to make, because one of the things that's very impressive to anyone who knows the footage is to see how adroitly you were able to move from one story to the next. You've got a multi-layered story going on. You've got not only the movie within the movie, but you're moving, from Jake and his circle to the many students that are around, and it's like a caterpillar train. You've got several movements going through. I'm thinking, well, how much of that was, so to speak, self-explanatory once Mo had pulled together the fragments of how much was in the script that you were, scavenging for? Could you talk just about locating all those story threads?
Well, it was a combination. There was a shooting script, a complete shooting script, and then I actually went back and had them find and pull every version, previous versions of the script from Orson's archives at the University of Michigan Library in Ann Arbor, just because I wanted to sort of see the progression, because the script was pretty hard to read and pretty dense and didn't really, it wasn't not that inviting, I guess you might say. And a lot of the material that we had wasn't necessarily reflected in the screenplay. And I think what happened was he had shot over a 6-year period. He started shooting in 1970 and finished in early 76, and kept having different ideas. And Peter Bogdanovich and Frank Marshall, who both worked on the movie, originally worked on it with me, told me that Orson would have a typewriter on the set. And so a lot of the things that seemed improvised, those were actually things that he had written. So basically everything in the movie was written.
Right.
There was almost no improv. But he was constantly coming up with new ideas as he was shooting, and shooting and reshooting and shooting scenes again over a 6-year period. Actors would come and go, and he would recast with somebody else and shoot the scene again. So I mean, frankly, it was a huge mess in terms of the organization, and there wasn't really a clear roadmap. I mean,
Right.
We never did find a document. I mean, we kept looking for a document like the famous 54-page memo from Crushing Evil.
Right.
But at a certain point, we didn't find it. We found a lot of memos that he had read to his editors, but they were like technical things, like complaining about the reels being too large, or the leaders being not made with specifications, or just really like petty, kind of mean technical things that he wanted for his own editing, but nothing in terms of like guidance for story.
Right.
And then we sort of realized at one point, well, why would he send this stuff down? Because he was always planning on editing himself. So there would have been no reason for him to kind of sit down and like write editing notes.
Right.
So with that being the case, I mean, between Peter Bogdanovich, Frank Marshall, Phil Brinza, who's the other producer, and myself, we just went through all the footage and tried to figure out where everything went.
Right.
I mean, we had a basic skeleton based on the screenplay. But then every time we would find some other footage, it would be, where does this go? So Frank describes it as a cross between a jigsaw puzzle and a scavenger hunt, and which is true because we didn't really know what we were looking for a lot of times, but when we would find something, it would always be this like diamond that would like fit perfectly within this jewel arrangement. So
Yeah.
and it's just. Sometimes a couple things we didn't even find until we were actually mixing the movie. And I had guys going through full time between Doug and my friend Paul. Paul was going through all the old work picture that Orson had cut, but everything was so disorganized that really we just had to go through every single roll, hundreds of rolls, and just find everything.
I wanted to ask you too about certain specific choices, because there are, and I think it might come down to what Mo was able to find in the scavenger hunt, because in some of the footage that Gary showed me, there was when that school teacher, he asks him, he's going to take a dip, and he actually gets, in footage I've seen, he gets that teacher to take off all his clothes and be standing there in his underwear. And there's a close-up of Huston that it was so dramatic and striking, where it's almost like he's been photographed several times over, and Welles made a kind of cubistic edit where it's like his face is rippling and you're seeing all kinds of levels of sadism pouring out of his eyes in that moment. I thought, well, I was wondering where it went, but I think maybe it did show up in the scavenging.
Well, we had... So we had that was one of the scenes that Orson had pretty much fine cut.
Right. And
we had his edit. But if you saw that, we never saw that footage. So if he had removed it because he had a pretty much fine cut of that scene, and it was long, and basically what you saw, but we never saw anything where the school teacher stripped down his underwear. So you saying that's actually the first time I'm hearing it,
oh boy.
And we went through 100 hours of negative and never found it. So maybe there's going to be a director's cut at some point. I mean, I do know that there were 14 cans of missing negative. There was an inventory list that listed like 1,204 items, and we ended up with like 1,191 cans or something. So we know that there are 14 cans of negative. We didn't know whether they were actually missing or whether that it was actually an accounting error. But maybe that's something that's missing, and it'll turn up somewhere in some vault in Paris, around the outskirts, and we'll have to go back into the movie.
Well, Wells is the gift that keeps on giving, so.
It really is. So it's good to know that, and you guys better stay for that footage.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask, in line with that idea, Mo and Ellen both, I mean, whichever, what was the particular challenge? Let's start with you, Mo, in terms of finding the scavenging hunt. Was there a particular holy grail or frustration where it was like, where do I find this? And did you find it, or was this something that got away?
Well, when we first started, there was no game plan. It's just, please be Rumpelstiltskin and make these cans turn into something scannable. So it was daunting, and it took much longer than we thought it would. As we were looking for things, one thing that became really funny to me, having read the script, was that based on what Bob explained, how he would Orson would cut things down just to save money, and I don't know if you noticed, but in the film, someone complains that all the slates are cut off, and they were for us too. So I had a way of identifying things, hence that list we had of just to look for visuals. So one of the things I was supposed to look for was the sex scene in the car in the rain.
Right.
And so remember, it's 16 millimeter, which one frame is about the size of my pinky fingernail. And there's I think that was one of the trickiest parts of the film, And so I called Philip, the producer, and told him I thought I found this one thing. And so he said, well, roll through it and describe it to me. It was so difficult because you all saw it. It's just trippy, You go from a breast to beads to... And he said, well, what do you think? And my dirty mind started actually coming up with stuff that wasn't there at all. But because it's so abstract, you think it could be anything. So it was things like that where we just had to, again, with the magnifying glass, thousands and thousands of feet of film.
And Ellen, in terms of the music, was there any speed bump that you ever kept hitting okay, how do we solve this, and how did you solve it?
Well, I would say that nothing in this picture did not have a speed bump. Everything had a speed bump. My speed bump was 4 days before we were scoring Michelle went into ICU with pneumonia.
He collapsed in after he finished writing the score.
So he was nowhere around the scoring or the mixing or any of it. So that was when, and I'm in Paris and I'm in Belgium by myself. And Bob and Philip do make it up there the day before scoring. But I had to kind of step up and say, okay, I have no composer, but it's all written. We went over it with them, and we get it into the computer, and I have to make sure that it gets from the page into the Pro Tools, and that was a big situation.
Bravo.
It was a big mess, and nobody could have done it but Ellen, because literally she's a musician herself, so she knows how to read music. She knows the old way of doing things that Michelle works in, and he's a guy who has been at all of the scoring sessions and conducts the orchestra ever since he started in 1960. So this was the first time he was never there, and because it was a lot of it was a jazz-based score, a lot of the score was written as improv, which he wrote it as improv, but because probably he would have been there to tell the players how to do it. But luckily, a lot of the players that we have were guys who worked with him for decades and knew enough about Michelle that they kind of knew what hopefully he would have wanted, but they all lived in fear of Michelle because he was such a tyrant that everybody was really afraid that they were going to do the wrong thing. But I think it ended up turning out okay just because they were so into his head and because Ellen was familiar enough with the music. I mean, it was another weird situation where we weren't scoring the picture, so I had no idea what scenes the music was supposed to go to.
A lot of it was because he had written it to a different version of the picture, and by the time I got there, I realized that it's not going to be that easy to conform it to the new picture, and then he became ill, so I had to make a decision. Do I want to try to conform this music, or do I want to just record it as he wrote it? And then from there, Bob and I can figure out where it goes and how it works, and I had to conform most of it to the picture, and so it was a challenge, but I think
it was a nightmare. You made it work and it all came together. But it was
a challenge.
Well, Bob, I want to ask you a little about Peter Bogdanovich, because he is what kind of influence did he have on the final product? Because he's along for the whole ride, really, with knowing Wells and so forth. What was that working relationship with him?
It was, well, for me, it was a thrill to work with Peter because he's a great director like, Orson or John Huston, so it was really incredible. But he was sort of the stand-in for Orson. At one point, I guess, Peter made a pledge to Orson that if anything ever happened to him, he said he would, make sure the movie got finished. And he was one of the forces like Gary and Henry Jaglom and Frank Marshall and a lot of guys who were trying to get the movie finished all these years. And it finally happened, thanks to their willpower. But then, of course, then Peter was with us in the editing room the entire time. And because he had known Orson all those years, even before they started shooting, he was close friends with him and had appeared in the movie. He kind of brought all that insight. And was sort of the stand-in director and also brought in his years of filmmaking experience.
Right.
Helping to shape the movie. He and Frank, are both such veterans. Yeah. That was really great to have them, to really help kind of make the movie make sense. And frankly, Peter was great because he remembered things as well. I mean, there's a scene where Jake and the actor's character are shooting the dummies. And I put the scene together, and Peter said, there was this great scene where Oya was shooting the gun, and there was all this smoke blowing around her. And I haven't seen that since Orson showed it to me 40 years ago. And that was one of the things. And I said, we gotta find this incredible shot. And I think Moya got enlisted, and we found this great piece that Peter remembered for 47 years back. So,
there you go.
Yeah. It was a great resource. But plus, having Peter around, Frank gave me the strength to not take everything that Orson did as sacred.
Right.
And just try to make it work for the movie. And those guys, because if I was working alone, I might not have wanted to touch any of the things Orson had edited, but they said, Orson just got these things as showpieces, as promo reels to try to raise money. When we put them in the movie, we need to basically make them the way that they need to be in terms of the overall flow.
Right.
And I just knew that, Orson always said that, when he was in the editing room, he was the enemy of the film. Meaning that he always was tougher on the movie than anybody else would have been. And so having Peter and Frank to back me up on that, I always knew that Orson would have wanted to keep things short and tight. And as a matter of fact, I think that if Orson had been involved, the pitch probably would have been 10 minutes shorter even. But there was a certain amount of regard for trying to make sure that it's historically accurate.
Well, and there's something to be said for. First of all, you've got John Huston's amazing performance, and then you've got Peter Bogdanovich. Really, it's interesting because some of the people at the party are projecting, and there's a kind of cartoony bigness to things, and that kind of fits the times. But the movie has a kind of beautiful keel, a kind of an anchor in it, because Huston just knows how not to overdo, and Bogdanovich is underplaying him. So there's a wonderful listening game where they're and you caught that in your cutting. You really feel that. And Susan Strasberg is a kind of flogging them with her questions, and Joe McBride is so much fun. But Norman Foster. Norman Foster is Billy, right? With Gumdrops and Journey to Grant. He's the director of Journey into Fear. He's also the director of My Pal Bonito, which is part of It's All True. He's a director, and here he is turning in a performance, and my God, what a beautiful foil he is in the course of the whole thing.
Well, one of my favorite parts of this job was to hear Orson's direction on the soundtrack, to hear him giving direction. And he didn't need to give a lot of direction to Huston and Susan Strasberg and Mercedes or O'Brien or a lot of these professional actors, but because Norman was primarily a director, Wells really gave him a lot of guidance. So just to hear take after take where he was down to the smallest thing, saying, "Okay, Norman, just bringing the performance down, from the first take. Less voice, quieter, less facial movement. Don't move your mouth." And just the way he kind of took him under his wing and really toned down that performance and really made it into something that was really sympathetic and believable. It was, for me, one of the biggest treats in the movie. His direction.
Yeah.
And but yeah, in terms of the main story between John Huston and Peter, I think that's when we realized that we had something that was a real movie that felt like it was dramatic and had an emotionality to it. And that was surprising because for the longest time, we didn't know, we'd seen the kind of kooky party scenes and like the more on-site movie within the movie stuff. But once we started to focus in on the A story of his old director and his protege and his disappointment and his despair and the feeling of betrayal, I mean, that's when we knew that we had a real movie that, was not just like some kind of history project of putting together some old historic footage.
No, it's true, because what happens is, you're naming the exact fear one has coming in, and yet here one sees, so many Orson Welles' movies are about the death of a man, right? Here we've got the death of a soul. We actually see that character's spirit, It's so moving, and you guys caught that so well. It's like that's where you feel you got the movie that he was meaning to make.
Well, the footage was magical. I mean, that was a lot of that footage was stuff that, for whatever reason, Orson had never really edited. Some of it he had cut these select rolls for the blow-up, but he had never actually edited the footage. But it was shot in such a way that, it really was a joy to put together, and it really, just was moving, working on that stuff. 1 in the morning, putting together the scene where, Jake was drinking and talking about John Dale's suicide. I just can't forget that.
Yeah, no, it's astounding. I get choked up. Sorry about that, but it's like you can't help it because this is 48 years in the making. How about you guys? You took 6 months more to scavenge. Was that what it needed?
It's just that.
Just that. And how long was this overall process, Bob? Just bringing this all together and making this happen?
Well, from the point that the negative arrived in LA, I think, when was it, you guys? Last April or May?
I came on in April, so I would guess maybe March.
April. So that's when Mo started. That's when my first assistant started, and then I came on. I got hired in August, but then I couldn't even start because there was still so much stuff to transfer and organize. So I couldn't even start until almost the end of October, which was very frustrating for me. But
This past October.
yeah. So and then everybody was in a rush to get to Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival, because it was so important. Because Orson had a long history with Cannes, and the movie had been in France all those years, and our producer was from Paris, and so everybody really wanted to make that the target date, and that date ended up falling apart anyway. But there was this huge rush, and it was very nerve-wracking because I kept saying, this movie's been 45 years in the making. Why are we rushing at this point? I'm like, you guys, we need time. So, as usual, I just compensated by working till after midnight every day and just really digging in. And thank goodness I had such a great crew, between everybody I had in the editing room and these guys and our sound people and everything else. Everybody just dug in and worked around the clock and got it done. But we feel like we didn't shortchange it either.
No, well, it's a great irony because, the story that Henry Jackman told of being thwarted by the French court. So therefore, because of the Netflix consideration, the Canada is snobbish about Netflix and its revolution. They're they're not going here. So it's like Orson Welles was out there going, "Fuck you, French. Fuck you."
Well, yeah, and I think it actually worked out well going to Venice anyway because Orson also had a relationship with Venice. He had won the Golden Lion in 1970, the year that he started making The Other Side of the Wind. So I thought it was perfect that we came back to Venice all these years later with a finished movie. And Orson had shot in Venice, he Merchant of Venice, which was one of his unfinished projects. So there's all this footage of Orson walking around Venice with his cape blowing and the whole thing. So yeah, it was definitely perfect for us to be here in Venice.
Well, we're also grateful to you for everything you did for us. Thank you all.